The opening segment shifts from traditional comic book spectacle to a bleak study of a man entirely consumed by his own mission. Frank Castle eliminates the remaining stragglers of the Nucci crime family in a clinical, almost robotic fashion. This sequence lacks celebratory triumph. The violence feels heavy, exhausting, and transactional. By the time he steps away from the carnage, the silence speaks volumes. It highlights a central thesis of the special: vengeance provides no actual catharsis. Once the targets are gone, the silence forces him to confront his emptiness, setting an immediate, unyielding tone. This segment provides the narrative's psychological core. Having locked away his tactical gear, Frank stands over his family's graves, pushed to the absolute brink of self-destruction. The sequence relies heavily on atmosphere and John Bernthal's intense, grief-stricken performance. The tension hinges entirely on his internal war, manifested through a hallucination of his deceased daughter, Lisa. This spectral intervention grounds the narrative, shifting Frank's motivation from self-pity to a harrowing realization: his family would not want him to end his life in darkness. This emotional pivot recontextualizes his survival instinct before the physical threats even arrive. As Frank wanders the decaying streets of Little Sicily, the narrative explores his psychological unraveling. The sequence blends gritty street realism with surrealist psychological drama. The apparitions of Curtis Hoyle and Karen Page serve as an externalized conscience, dissecting his failures and coping mechanisms. Karen's manifestation provides a stark, confrontational balance to his isolation, forcing him to acknowledge that avoiding his mission has left a vacuum filled by worse criminal elements. The tension here relies on dialogue and psychological weight rather than physical combat, building an engaging narrative friction. The introduction of Judith Light's My Nucci brings an escalating sense of dread. The scene is static but intense, relying on sharp, malicious dialogue as the paralyzed matriarch lays out her trap. When she reveals the massive bounty placed on Frank's head, the narrative tension shifts instantly from internal reflection to survival horror. The environment of Little Sicily transforms into a claustrophobic cage, making every background extra a potential threat and establishing a ticking clock before the inevitable chaos erupts. This sequence features the special's primary action set piece, defined by tactile, brutal choreography. As a small army of mercenaries tears through Frank's apartment complex, the filmmaking highlights the severe cost of violence. Frank uses the tight, crumbling architecture to bottleneck his attackers, relying on desperate improvisation, physical strength, and raw environmental awareness. When the building is set ablaze, the visual palette shifts to a suffocating mix of fire and shadow, elevating the stakes from a standard shootout to an intense struggle for survival. As Frank fights his way up to the rooftop, the action transitions from defensive survival to aggressive kinetic movement. The choreography maintains a grounded realism, showing Frank taking physical damage, staggering under fatigue, and displaying visible exhaustion. The sequence culminates in a desperate, bruising leap from the rooftop to escape the inferno. This moment emphasizes his vulnerability. He is not an invincible superhero, but an aging, battered soldier relying entirely on pure willpower to survive the drop. The climax shifts the thematic focus from destruction to preservation. Presented with a clear shot to pursue My Nucci and end her threat permanently, Frank makes a deliberate choice to turn back and protect his vulnerable neighbors, Dre, Debbie, and young Charlie. This pivot provides the emotional resolution of the narrative. By prioritizing the safety of innocent lives over his obsession with killing his enemies, Frank finds a constructive purpose for his violence, transitioning from a weapon of pure retaliation into a shield for those caught in the crossfire. The final sequence brings the story full circle back to the cemetery, offering a quiet, melancholic resolution. When Charlie gifts Frank a simple paper rose, he places it on Lisa's grave, symbolizing a shift from destructive grief to a renewed sense of duty. As he dons his gear once more, the narrative leaves him not at peace, but with a clear, sober understanding of his role. He accepts that his war is far from over, concluding the special on a resonant, uncompromising note.